artist, historian, teacher, humanitarian. These are just a few words that describe Richard Capes. Since moving to Sarasota in 1974, Richard has been capturing the area, both past and present, with his own unique style of art. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, November 6, 1942, he showed signs of talent at an early age, and encouraged by his parents, he has developed them in making him one of this area's premier artists.
I guess I was very fortunate to have had parents who enjoyed art as much as I did. Even at an early age, I had some experiences that encouraged me to actually study art. I was working and doing lots of drawings on the floor, and my parents said, "Do you really want to pursue this?" So they were able to, since we had a business, a restaurant in Atlanta and close to the High Museum, I was able to take private classes there at the school. And over the years, I developed an interest in many different aspects of art, but I really, over the period of time, became more interested in drawing and painting, even though they taught pottery and ceramics and sculpture. What brings to bear my great interest is that I had parents who said, "Look, go for it, but you're going to have to be a teacher, though, because you'll never make a living as an artist." We had several customers who were artists, and of course, they were struggling. So I said, okay. So I pursued an educational background and went to the university and became a college teacher, and I taught secondary. And I loved teaching. I enjoyed it tremendously. But I also, in the process, am an adventurer, and I love to explore. So while I was at the university, I was able to travel and go to Latin America and other parts of the world. I went to Italy and studied for a while. And then when I came back, I knew I had to make a living. So back to teaching. I got a job at the university in southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, a charming place, and did many drawings on the side in New Orleans. And my interest still was painting and drawing. I taught. I had a wonderful facility there. Later on, I moved to Kentucky and taught at the Morehead State University in Kentucky. At that particular juncture in my life, I noticed the clouds were very gray and lots of snow, and my mother had moved to Florida, and I came down and said, "You know, I really love it here. I wish I could come here and make a living." Well, I wasn't sure, but I made the change and came to Florida, and that was in the early 70s. I never got the sand out of my shoes, because the fact is, I had inspiration again. I met a lady who was a portrait artist who let me work in her studio on Siesta Key, and she encouraged me to chronicle, as I had done when I was in Europe and in Latin America. She said, "No one's really doing it the way you do, Richard. You have a special feel. You have apparently a love for what you do." So I started drawing the buildings and the major historical sites, but also the beaches and the small inroads of places that didn't seem to be of any great significance to many, but I found it compositionally exciting. So over the years, as I said, from the mid-70s, I continued doing, I guess, hundreds of drawings. I had a professor at the university who used to assign us to do 100 drawings on the weekend. And most students would say 100 drawings. Well, he meant do them quickly. And so I learned to draw and think fast. Part of the whole concept is that your mind and your body can work together to assimilate what you see in a spirited way, a way that's full of life and energy. So the line and the color combine, but they're not static. There's a lot of movement. Up close, I have people look at my drawings up close. I said, "I'll tell you what, step back about 3 or 4 feet. You'd be better off." They are looking for something that they really should see further away. Compositions often have energy, and the energy that's transferred is by the way in which the strokes are paint or lined. So in many of my pictures, I do encourage people not to worry about way up close, because you're just going to see a lot of little static movement. It's almost as though energy in life has to be transferred, if you're an artist, into your work. Without it, it's not very exciting.
Growing up with Richard was really quite a wonderful experience. He unfortunately, my memory doesn't bring back all of the things that that we did as children and later on as young adults. But I can remember Richard was always very interested in drawing and in art. I can recall one of the earliest things I remember that he did. My mother had bought jackets for us, and one of the jackets, my jacket, had the lining, and this, we couldn't have been probably 8 to 10 years old, if that old. But in the jacket, the lining of the jacket had a bright portrayal of roosters all on the inside. And Richard decided that he was going to draw that. So he drew it and colored it and so forth, and it was really a wonderful representation of exactly what was in that lining of that jacket. And that was one of my memories of his early artwork.
He's had a great influence even on several of our grandchildren. His niece, who is 10 years old, she wants to be just exactly like Uncle Richard. And she does a lot of artwork herself. And I don't know, if it just must be in the genes, because my husband has no talent when it comes to art. And when you think of someone who comes out of the same family, I find it quite remarkable how one would have it and one doesn't. So it's just a natural ability.
I first met Richard in the mid-'60s at the University of Georgia. We were both students in the art department. And at that time, I could tell that he was going to do something spectacular. He was an excellent student, a good artist. He had a great sense of color and design, and most of the faculty members and the students admired him there. But, you know, it takes more than just being a good artist to be a successful artist. And after we graduated, I lost track of him. I hadn't seen him until the 70s when I moved to Sarasota. And lo and behold, he's here just charging away. And
my actual interests are very diverse in painting and drawing. I have for years been a chronicler and recorder of the history, but I also enjoy working with color and design. My teachers were of such a variety that I had an opportunity to understand how to explore design and color. I'm working right now at my drawing table on several pieces. One is a rendition, a more classical approach to the City Hall in Venice. And I've also have recently finished a more lyrical and fun piece in color. It's kind of a fair overlooking with a big golden sun. It's a lighthearted, spirited piece done very spontaneously. It's actually a demonstration piece. I did it without any reference to any material. I just started working directly with the surface, which I love to do out of my imagination. I'm working on several pieces. Actually, this one, as I said, of the City Hall. I'm also working on another one of Venice. But underneath it all, I'm working on the background for another painting, developing the color areas for this piece, which will later, as these color areas develop, will be an overpainted development of a picture. I'm not sure exactly what the subject will be. So I let the subject evolve. The subject of an abstract or non-subjective work, often, if any subject matter appears, it will come at the end of the painting. Often naming a painting itself that is non-subjective comes about as you start to sense what you want to call it. Whereas with City Hall, well, it's not too hard. I already know what I'm going to call this piece because the subject matter is already defined. But the excitement of both things are that I enjoy doing both. I enjoy working historically and recording, and I enjoy working with my imagination. In my studio, I have done that for years. The Florida Artist Group, which I'm a member of, is usually once a year we have a major show. This coming year it'll be in Jacksonville. And what I'm doing now is putting together some ideas in my studio. This piece in the very foreground is called, it's Indian Feather Dance. It's a piece that was in a major show. The colors are built layer on layer from underneath another painting. In the far background is one called This is the Great Thinker. Actually, I include Einstein in that, so it's a twist of mind, it's a thought of mind exploring color. I'm working also in the studio, which I don't know that can be seen, is a rendition that will be made into a painting which is much more definitive of the Crosley Mansion. I have been asked to do a number of scenes of the Crosley Mansion as it's being restored. The Crosley was in very poor repair for a while, but now is taking on a new light. So I'm working on that. Also, in the studio I have a couple of my wood carvings. I don't do very many wood carvings, but every once in a while I have sculpted or carved pieces in two-dimensional relief. It's sort of a high relief effect. My studio is my home base. I work out of this for many of my projects.
As a prolific artist, Richard is constantly working, yet he finds ways with his art to give back to the community.
He's fundamentally a very sensitive, romantic, a dreamer, as well as a very realistic person. He's absolutely remarkable. And he is also a great humanitarian, very sharing of his time. He's given a lot of time as a teacher to children who need instruction, and to older people, and to whom, whenever he is asked to do anything, he finds the time. He has an overextended, overbusy schedule, but he finds the time to lend a hand for whatever is needed in the cultural or creative arts. He's absolutely amazing that way.
Being a part of the very active art scene in the city, which he has been. He's been a very outstanding Sarasota artist and a good citizen of the city, I would say, for many years. He's been extremely generous with his talent and giving things to various organizations in the city, in spite of the fact he's a professional artist. That's his career. That's the way he makes his living. But he has been extremely generous in giving things to various organizations in town for sale for their benefits or for gifts for members who've done outstanding work for them. So I would say he's been extraordinarily generous in his contributions to the community.
Being here and mentioning that we have bright days and golden nights, I'm aware of the fact that we don't always have great opportunities, and many people need our help. So I have, over the years, worked very hard to try to help certain charitable organizations that are dear to my heart. The Lighthouse for the Blind, as you know, I've been a large contributor in terms of creating a piece of art each year that embodies a lighthouse, with the hopes that someone will say, this symbol should be a part of my collection. This past year, a number of those pieces, originals, were acquired, which was very nice. But this is an ongoing project. All the charities and all the organizations I cannot work with. I don't have the capacity to do everything, but I have selected and worked with different groups. I work with some of the high schools. I work with a number of organizations which I feel comfortable can use my art. My giving is through my art. I make a contribution of what I think might enrich the institution through auctions or sales or programs. I will admit that in many cases this type of thing can be very hard to do because my schedule is very tough. I ask people, please, I need 6 months to make a living, and then I'll try to do the charities the rest of the time. But I am a working artist. I make a living at this, and it sometimes is hard to give all of your time to other organizations, so I give part of the time. But it is a reward. The reward is people know that there's a need, and if I can be a part of that, I'm a part of this community. I make a living here. I love the community. So what can I do better than to give back to those people who are not able to maybe create art, cannot afford to have a decent lifestyle, cannot see well, or have bad health problems. All these things are things that I have been blessed so far, and may change someday, that I can give back and feel good about it, because we all have at some time needs, and those needs we need to be filled.
Richard is best known for his historical paintings and drawings of Florida. He can be seen on locations working to capture the feeling and mood of a place that may soon be only a memory.
He paints the history of Sarasota in a way, actually, that I try to write about it. He'd like paint with a nostalgic brush. You know, if nostalgia was a color, then you would see it on Richard Capes' paintings. And I try to write like that. It's more nostalgic than historic, as indeed I think some of his paintings are.
He is capturing the way Venice has looked in the past, and things always change every year. Buildings are torn down, so they are captured forever in his artwork. And then he also tries to do the new Venetian architecture. We have a new downtown restroom, and that is on his new downtown panoramic picture, which, to do a picture of a bathroom, seems a little strange, but it's a very lovely piece of architecture, and most of the visitors to Venice don't realize it's a bathroom.
I did this particular piece for my book, but recently it's been put on the National Register of Historic Places. I tried to create a very dramatic perspective of the staircase going up from the beach to the cabanas. Siesta, of course, is itself a landmark barrier island because it has so much history and so much beauty. There are many aspects of Siesta that I could never cover, so by doing 200 drawings, I think I covered as much. I still have people say, "You didn't put my condo in there." I said, "Please forgive me, I only have one hand." The last 22 years, I've created mainly things that I've enjoyed in Sarasota, and it's been a part of my life to record what I found interesting. But as time has changed and lots of new communication skills are being developed, and actually with the advent of the internet, I'm finding people asking for me to not only do work here, but to do work in other parts of the country and the world. I'm very happy to say that this is a whole new avenue for me. I've always enjoyed creating, but to branch out and to make new pieces of art in other parts of the country is even more exciting.
The best way I can describe Richard Capes is that the more I got to know him, the more I realized he was like a Superman. Not a Superman, but a super artist. He seemed like a mild-mannered person on the outside, and you would never expect what you'd find when you got on the inside. You put a pen in his hand, and he would just let this artistic vision come flowing out like superpowers. You just wouldn't believe it. He could look at anything, whether it happened to be a building or any kind of thing in Sarasota. This is where we work together. That just would come alive. It wouldn't be just a stagnant object, but he would just get into it and find the inner essence of whatever it is he's working with. And it would just like magically come to life, like some superpowers coming out of his pen into the canvas or on the sketching tablet that we're working with. And these buildings, primarily that Richard's interested in, and these landmarks and everything, he wouldn't worry about the structure and this perspective and making everything just so and stagnant. He would get in there and just show the accents and the lines and the way the cars would go by and the people would go by and the trees would surround the buildings or whatever the subject is that he's working on, and it would just come to life.
The chronicler of Sarasota continues to sketch, capturing the history of Southwest Florida. And now, with the internet, the world has a chance to enjoy a Sarasota treasure.